Studies Department, in case you didn't already know this, is one of the oldest and largest undergraduate programs or departments that trains students in international relations and comparative politics and area studies. So we're somewhat unusual in a liberal arts setting. So I wanted to mention that. And we've been graduating majors since the 1950s, if you can believe that. And they've gone on to do amazing things. They have earned Fulbrights, they've entered the Peace Corps, they have gone into the Foreign Service, they have attended the finest graduate schools and law schools that are out there. They have founded their own businesses. They have worked for nonprofits, the financial industry. I could go on and on. So our students, I think, do well in their postgraduate work, in part because we have a very rigorous major, and anyone enrolled in my senior seminar this semester can share what that looks like with you. Right, you're nodding your heads. But it's also because our students are encouraged to engage with different cultures by learning foreign languages and by doing these kinds of opportunities, studying abroad, interning, working abroad. So our students are really special, and the ones you'll be hearing from today have done all of those things and more. They have courageously gone overseas. They have allowed themselves to be transformed by their experiences overseas, and that's anything really, that's everything we could hope for in our majors. So they are wonderful examples of the kinds of global citizens and global leaders that we try to develop here at Rhodes College. So without further ado, let me introduce our first presenter. And her name is Lori Williams. She is an international studies major from Dyersburg, Tennessee. She studied abroad in Morocco last year, and she's also done quite extensive work here in Memphis, reaching out to refugee communities here in town. So she has distinguished herself in all kinds of ways. So I'm going to invite her to come up and go first, and I would ask that you please hold any questions until the end of the session, and then I'm going to invite all the presenters to come back on stage, and you can pepper them with all of your many questions that you'll have for them. So please, a warm welcome for our first presenter.
Hi. So I can cross off like introduction off the first thing on my sheet. And I also realized this title is really corny, and it's one of those where you put like title here, like do this later. But these are really the three things that defined my summer, I would say. Croissants, cathedrals, and Catalan, a Barcelona epic, brought to you by Lori Williams. But I'll get to a little bit more of thank yous at the end, but I want to say a special thanks to someone who couldn't be here today, because I vividly remember the day I first heard about this internship program in the spring of 2016. I was sitting at the end of this hall in Professor S.N. Kurtish's office. She's my advisor. He's on sabbatical this year, unfortunately. We were discussing my upcoming semester in Morocco, and she brought up the internship and talked to me about even potentially going to Spain. And I remember smiling and nodding and thinking, there's no way I'll ever do that. That's just too crazy. And I guess that kind of foresight is why professors get paid the big bucks these days. So we'll go ahead and get started. Yeah, there we go. So a lot of people ask, the first thing they ask us about going abroad is why we went where we did. So I put a few photos from Barcelona. You can see it doesn't take much to want to go there. And honestly, the reason I chose it is because it's the last place somebody told me that I should go. Somebody, when I was actually studying abroad in Morocco, said they were going to Barcelona, and they'd been before, and that it was a beautiful place that everybody should visit, and I thought, why the heck not? So when I was making my application, it was definitely high on my priority list. But also, Barcelona is home to a large migratory population, which Dr. Isley alluded to the fact that that's something I'm passionate about, working with refugees and migratory populations. And a large portion of that migratory population is Moroccan. So I was already in Morocco enjoying the culture, enjoying the people, enjoying the food. I was thinking, maybe I'll have an opportunity to get to meet some more Moroccan people and maybe enjoy some more Moroccan food in another context. And I'd also been studying Spanish since high school and really wanted to push that further outside the classroom. And finally, if you're ever given the opportunity to live somewhere for a summer, I would suggest making it somewhere with a warm coastline, preferably Mediterranean. So that was another reason that Barcelona really appealed to me. But where I worked. So I worked at a place called Casal dels Infants. And it's one of the most well-known and well-respected social outreach programs and nonprofits in Barcelona. As you can tell, I worked with kids. Actually, it's such a well-known program that in the airport, when I was leaving the country at the American Airlines counter, the lady and I were making small talk while she was checking my bag, and she was asking me about my time and where I'd worked. And I told her El Casal, and she was like, oh, me too. And I worked with 3 to 5-year-olds as well. That's crazy. So it's really well-known throughout the city. It provides after-school and summer programming for at-risk youth, with the majority of them being from migratory or refugee families, and a lot of them being from Morocco, Bolivia, Ecuador, Colombia, Armenia, very diverse group of kids. And I was working with 3 to 5-year-olds who are adorable in the way that all 3 to 5-year-olds are. And I talked a little bit about language acquisition, and the students I worked with definitely contributed to a more colorful vocabulary that I learned this summer, but they were really cute, so it kind of made up for it. So on the daily activities, I was organizing kind of classroom type interactions, different station kind of activities, basically like a school setting, helping do field trips, which involved herding 25 3 to 5-year-olds onto public transportation, which is challenging. I even got to go camping with them at the end of the summer for 3 days overnight, which was also a bit of a challenge. I had 3 little boys in my room who were especially rambunctious. And by the end of the 8 weeks working with them, I was left with this sentimental feeling that I could use just a few more weeks with these kids, and also, like, to contrast, the strong desire to never have kids of my own. But I enjoyed it, needless to say. And I learned a lot about working as a team because I was working with a group of volunteers and a classroom leader, especially working as a team in a foreign language. So like I said, the language acquisition was pushed way further than it's ever been pushed in a classroom, just with daily vocabulary, working 8 hours a day in Spanish. I mentioned Catalan on the first slide, so if you're thinking, oh, Casaldo's Infanza doesn't look like Spanish, it's not. It's Catalan, which I knew they spoke in Barcelona, but I thought it was like one of those like party tricks where they're like, oh, on Christmas, like on Easter, they speak Catalan. No, every street sign, every announcement on public transportation, everything's in Catalan. So that was a bit of an adjustment. It's a different language than Spanish, similar but different. And so everybody I worked with, and even the kids, that was their preferred language. So for them and for me, speaking Spanish was something a little bit different. And I even learned a little bit of Catalan this summer along with my Spanish, especially commands. So I've got like, get down from there, get on this, stop eating that, eat this, put this on, take that off. So definitely language acquisition was probably the biggest thing I learned this summer. And while language skills are really important, and probably the most like tangible way to measure what I learned this summer, there are a lot of other intangibles, I would say. So I've put some slides up here of my friends I made this summer. That's my landlady in the left corner. She was really cool. So I gained a lot of confidence in my ability to make friends wherever I end up. That's something I'm always a little nervous about. And I gained confidence in my ability to live on my own, especially in a foreign city, and I gained a lot of independence from doing that and traveling by myself. I learned a lot about the perceived responsibility I have to communicate the values I hold dear as an American and as a woman, even when situations are kind of touchy and even in a foreign language. And I learned how to navigate the metro during a labor strike, and I even learned how to make balloon animals, so there's a lot of learning going on. So over the course of this 10 weeks that I was abroad, I really felt Barcelona, which is a city of about 2 million people, shrink to a really, really comfortable bubble around me. It felt like my hometown. And I felt the world shrink a little bit too, so I've included some pictures here. I got to visit 6 countries. I saw some of the most iconic art and architecture in the Western world. I ate a lot of good food. And I eventually arrived at the realization that nothing really beats coming home. So I wanted to say thank you again to everyone who helps make this summer possible for all of us. So that's from the Buckman family, of course, to Dr. Boyd and Mrs. George Tracy, and to my friends and family who keep encouraging me to spend large amounts of time thousands of miles away, which looking back seems odd, but I like it nonetheless. And so I just don't really have any more words to express all the gratitude that I feel. Thank you all for coming as well, and I'm excited to hear the rest of the presentations.
Thank you, Lori. I'm going to invite Anna Lee Neighbors to join us us on stage next. Annalee is an IS major as well. She hails from Birmingham, Alabama. And she did a Maymester in France, so she has also studied abroad. And I think there are some plans that are being hatched to get her back overseas. There's been some whispers of Senegal as a possible destination, so stay tuned and we'll find out.
Is this on? Can you all hear me? Okay. Is it just? No, you're fine. It's okay, I'll figure it out. All right. No, you're good. Okay, hi everyone. I'm Annalee. I'm a junior from Birmingham, and this summer I lived in Brussels, Belgium, which is the capital of the European Union, so I got to kind of interact with that environment, and I worked at a think tank called the German Marshall Fund of the United States. So what that company, GMF, does is it focuses on the relationship between European politics and American politics and kind of generates a conversation about like the future of that and what that will look like as we kind of evolve and move through different administrations and different problems that come up and need to be solved. So they have several different program areas. There's like security and defense, the Mediterranean area, energy, and also trade. So I worked with the energy security program, which is kind of something that I thought I knew a lot about before I went because it's something that's interesting to me and the environment's special to me, but I actually don't know anything about it, which I learned over the summer, and I learned a lot more about it. So basically, I read a lot of EU legislation. I read about kind of the conversations in Brussels and in Washington about the environment and about the energy transition, about energy trade, about different types of energy, which I absolutely kind of was mind blown about, like the different aspects of it and kind of where it's evolving in the future, the digital aspects of energy, just how different actors are involved with the energy trade. So that was basically the main thing I learned was about things I thought I knew before. So that was really awesome for me. And I put a few pictures of just like the office, the view. So GMF is in this building that is literally right next to the European Council, the European Parliament, and the Concilium. So really centrally located right in the middle of Brussels. And there's a view from the roof of our building actually up in the corner, which kind of shows you just kind of the expanse of Brussels and what is happening there. And it's an incredibly busy city. I'd kind of compare it to like being in DC or something. Definitely similar to that. There's like meetings, conferences, things happening all day, every day. Really interesting conversations happening. So I kind of got to hear about those things from a more European perspective, which was really interesting for me. I think that's something like we don't usually think about that much, so that was definitely cool for me. So another big aspect of what GMF does is they host a lot of events that kind of generate a conversation about European and American issues. So these are just a few examples. We went to the Microsoft headquarters in Brussels, which is really awesome. It's like stepping into the future. Everything has screens and it's super fancy. And I went to an event hosted by BP, which was cool. And we also had an event with the US mission to the EU, which was really awesome. Just kind of to see how those really important people, political appointees, are engaging, which is awesome. What else? Yeah, so I lived in Brussels over the summer. I went to Brussels sort of like as I was getting on the plane, I realized I don't know anyone in Belgium. I don't know a soul there. So it was that was the main thing for me that was something to overcome and kind of figure out was just, I don't know how to get to a grocery store. I don't know about the metro system. I don't really know like the layout of the city. I don't know like the areas to hang out in, the areas to avoid. So that was kind of just every day it felt like there's something else to learn there. But it was a really interesting challenge, and I think, I don't know, it made me adaptable, definitely for sure. So Belgium has an interesting political climate because half of the country sort of identifies with a more Dutch heritage. It's Flemish, they speak Dutch, they have a different history a little bit, and then the other half of the country identifies a little more with a French heritage. They speak French, it's called Wallonia. And so Brussels is an interesting spot because it's the meeting place of that. Technically it's in Flanders, but they speak French in the city, but there are like neighborhoods where they speak Dutch. All the street signs are in French and Dutch. So I'm a French major as well as IS, but the Dutch component was really interesting to just witness, and you run into people on the street and you introduce yourself in French, but then they speak Dutch back to you and they're kind of offended. So that was interesting to kind of get used to. And as far as what I learned just being there over the summer, obviously the technical stuff, I talked about that a little bit. I didn't know anything, now I know a little more. I figured out a lot about myself. I was alone a lot. I figured out how to be alone, kind of be comfortable with that. I also figured out how to make friends with the people at my office. There were about 9 other interns who were from places within Europe, within the US. Some of them were older than me. All of them were older than me, actually. So it was interesting to just kind of figure out how to interact with people from entirely different backgrounds and with just really different worldviews, and kind of have interesting conversations where you can teach each other things, I think. Yeah, and like Lori said, Europe is great because you can go everywhere. Belgium is really centrally located, and they have this thing where they love young people and love for young people to travel, so tickets to anywhere were really cheap for younger people. So basically every weekend I would go somewhere different in Belgium. So I went to cities like Antwerp and Ghent, and I went to Bruges, lots of cool little towns, saw old buildings, cool architecture, ate good food, waffles. Yeah, and I also went to Amsterdam. And then at the very end, I took a longer trip to Paris and London, and kind of hung out there for a while. I actually met Rhodes people, and I met Claire in Paris, and I met some Rhodes people in London, so Rhodes is kind of international. Yeah, so I definitely learned a lot about myself. I think I learned a lot about what I want to do in life, more technical things that I want to follow in my studies, and also just kind of like how to survive on your own a little bit in an environment that's very different than what you're used to. So yeah, I just want to reiterate what Laurie said. I absolutely couldn't have done any of this without the help of the Buckmans, obviously. So thanks for that generous commitment to students going abroad, and also the IS department, Dr. Boyd, Ms. Tracy, for kind of getting us all out the door and on our feet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna Lee. So our next presenter is Jordan Giles. She is a double major, International Studies, Russian Studies. She went abroad last year, did a semester in Russia. She has all kinds of interesting internships already, even before she got this one. So she has this knack or talent, I don't know, it's very mysterious to me how she lands these amazing opportunities like the Smithsonian Institution and DC and other great opportunities. So thank you, Jordan.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a mystery to me too. People just keep wanting me, they keep accepting me, so I just keep going. But yeah, so first of all, I want to thank everyone for coming and listening to us talk at you. We're really excited to share our experiences, so we're really excited that you're here to listen. So like Professor Risley said, I'm a senior, double major, IS and Russian Studies, and with the Buckman this summer, I went to Dublin, Ireland. And I'm your first of 2 that went to Dublin, Ireland, so get ready for lots of Ireland. And I really like that all of the presentations so far have been about language. As a Russian major, obviously I'm really into language. So with all the opportunities that I've been afforded lately, studying in Russia, interning in Ireland, I'd like to welcome you to this presentation today in 3 languages. So welcome, dobro požalovat, and falcha. So the second is Russian and the third is Irish. So I bet you want to get to like the real details, the nitty-gritty, where did I work, what did I do, what's the meaning of life? So I have answers to some of those questions, and we'll just start with the most basic. So where did I work? So I worked at an NGO called Volunteer Missionary Movement International, or VMM for short. And it's an NGO in Dublin that can be easiest described, I don't even know if that's a word, most easily described as an international development NGO. But there are a lot of different facets to the organization that we'll talk about later. So in my attempt to distill the goals and the identities of VMM, I will tell you that VMM International essentially provides personnel in the form of volunteers funding and administrative support to partner organizations that are locally owned and operated in 9 African and 2 Asian countries. So if you've never had the pleasure of taking the IS MAP test in 100, or if you're about to do it in 100 or 110, whatever it is now, allow me to rattle off these countries. So obviously this is not like a 2-scale map, so like don't get angry with me that they're not exactly on the right country. But anyway, so there's tiny little Dublin, Ireland up there. And VMM works with Sierra Leone, Ghana, Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Malawi, Zambia, South Africa, and most recently, Myanmar and Vietnam. So what did I do? So essentially, my technical job term was assistant to the international program manager. But the international program manager does like everything. So she is in charge of all the volunteers that are abroad, all of the partners, all of the projects. So 5 of the 8 employees were her interns. So we had a lot to do. But the most memorable and the most meaningful things that I did are on the screen. So I prepared a budget for submission to the EU, which was like mind-blowing and also like, whoa, Excel. And I participated in sessions on the reconceptualization of VMM. So like I talked about earlier, VMM is really difficult to define. And we found that some identities and the goals that come from those identities had been shifted over the 50 years that VMM was an organization. And so I was a part of deciding which identities we would lean into and which identities we would kind of move away from. And that was really cool because I was a 2-month intern and I am deciding the future of this organization. So I was really into that. But if you've ever worked at an NGO, you know that's kind of not enough people. So if you're an intern, all right, you're on the same level as a CEO. So yeah, and I also participated in training volunteers for their short-term positions in Africa, which was cool on a personal level because it was like, wow, you're about to embark on the journey that I'm doing right now and the journey that I had in Russia. And so it was cool on that personal level, but also really interesting on a professional level to see a part of the population that VMM exists to serve. So it was kind of like a 360 experience for me. So what did I learn? Most important part. So I learned a lot of technical terms, pretty good with the lingo now, capacity development and all that stuff. But I learned that the NGO nonprofit sector is not for me. Like I said, not enough people, not enough time, not enough funding, not for Jordan. So, but that's okay because that leads me to my second learning outcome, which is knowing what you don't want to do or you don't want in life is just as important and maybe even more important than knowing what you do want to do or what you do want. And that was something I started to learn in Russia, but I was really, really solidified for me in Ireland. And that kind of leads into my second point, which is I learned about my own adaptability. Yeah. And yeah, that's how my summer went too, yeah. My own adaptability and my own perseverance and my own capability. I know Lori and Annalie kind of talked a little bit about that, learning about yourself, learning about what you can do, pushing your limits, learning where your new limits are. And yeah, so now for the entertainment portion of this presentation, what did I see? So I saw some really cool things, and I'm like, I get really jazzed by old things like history and stuff like that, so just excuse my like nerding out for a second. But this top left picture is my favorite experience from my summer. It is a Neolithic burial mound 1,000 years older than the pyramids on the eastern coast of Ireland. It's called Newgrange, and it's really cool because it was built so that on the winter solstice, when the sun rises, the light shines through the burial chamber. And when you go and visit, they do like a little simulation, and it feels so cool, and it's like awesome. So that was kind of personally exciting for me. And then this big mural picture is a mural wall that was created as an outlet in Belfast for people to express their political frustrations instead of resorting to violence. So we all know Belfast has had some troubles in the 90s, as far as like political opinions being not exactly lining up. So I thought that was a really cool way, and of course, as an IS major, that was interesting to me, thinking about how the UK interacts with Ireland and everything like that. And this top right picture is actually the view of O'Connell Street, which is the main street in Dublin city center, from my window at work. So yeah, it was very centrally located. It was awesome. This is the castle that was built in 1180. How cool is that? Yeah, and then these two very like picturesque Irish pictures are the Wicklow Mountains right south of Dublin, and also the setting for the classic movie P.S. I Love You. So yeah. And then this is a sunset picture of the River Liffey that divides Dublin. So lots of things. So I'd like to thank you for your attention, and thank you for coming again. And to the Buckman family, to my professors, to Sandy George Tracy and Baron Boyd, and everyone who has made me the woman that I am today, and the scholar that I am today, I'd like to say Mila Boikas, which is the Irish for 1,000 thank yous. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jordan. Our next presenter, we're going to get some gender diversity in this presentation lineup by welcoming Caleb Fowler to join us. Caleb is an International Studies History Bridge major. He also has studied abroad, so if you're seeing a pattern, yes, everyone has been abroad at one time or another. He did European studies as a young sophomore. And he will continue our discussion of Ireland, and if you want to look him up, as I did the other day, he's already on social media talking about this. So he beat us on the web, and you can see a little video that he did with Stint, which was the agency that used to go to Ireland, but I'll let him tell you about that. Thank you.
Totally forgot about that, but that did happen, yes. Yes, so Jordan mentioned language, how that's central to all of us, not central to me. I went to Dublin largely because I don't speak another language very well, and I picked up a little bit of Gaelic, but only enough to be able to play sports like that. So I am now in the Memphis Gaelic Athletic Association playing hurling and Gaelic football, which is a fun thing to bring back every year. But my Irish summer experience was quite fulfilling for me. I did not really know how fulfilling it'd be. I didn't know what it'd be like when I went there. I didn't really expect much. I went to Ireland 2 years ago as a study abroad student, but only there for a weekend. But being there really changed my perspective, even though it felt a lot like home many times. But what I really gained from that experience was that I can apply my liberal arts education, my study of history and international studies, to a different field, such as marketing or salesmanship. I could engage in community in a way that I hadn't done before, and I could break through a lot of problems that I had before the summer that I didn't even know that I had. So this is the Cliffs of Moher. They are some of the largest cliffs in Europe, and I really enjoyed just standing over the edge, which you'll see a picture later. I know Aunt Sandy would not appreciate that, but she'll see it. So I divided up my talk into about 3 different points, and I do really appreciate the liberal arts, and it sounds too academic, but it's just something I'm passionate about. So I'll talk about how the liberal arts really impacted my experience abroad and my professional development. I'll talk about the challenges and personal growth that I experienced while over there, and then I'll also address how community is very central to my experience. But starting off, the liberal arts has really trained me well for life, I'd say. I came to Rhodes because I wanted a well-rounded education, not so much because I was interested in history or international studies as a focus. Sorry, Dr. Risley. But I'm in it so that I can really learn how to be the good man speaking well and more of a Renaissance man. And I think that I really have gotten that education and was able to put it into work in Ireland. I was the marketing and sales executive for Pow Cow, which is a high-protein frozen yogurt company. I was an executive because my desk was next to the chief executive, and then it was my desk, and that was it. So that was a very good experience to be one of 2, so I was half the workforce, so I guess my voice did count for something. I was able to learn a lot about marketing and sales with no professional experience. I think I won the position because I showed him a hat that I helped design for the Rhodes crew team, and he was like, we can use that for marketing. And so I was able to go across Ireland. I just stayed on the island, but taking promotional shots of empty tubs. It did not have yogurt in it, so it didn't melt in my suitcase. But I really enjoyed diving into that. I was able to engage with social media in ways I hadn't before. I haven't checked my Instagram account in 2 years, so I don't really like social media, but I had to for this job, and it really helped me to grow in that regard and really challenge myself. So I also was challenged by being the salesman in stores giving out samples of Greek-style frozen yogurt to the Irish who, one, it's typically too cold to really enjoy a cold dessert, but they would try it anyway. Some would say, oh, I don't like yogurt, but you got to convince them it's not really yogurt, it's frozen yogurt, and this is the health benefits of that. And I was able to do so pretty effectively, and I guess you could say I was salesman of the summer. I really enjoyed my experience within PowCow when I saw that that was an option. PowCow, frozen yogurt, this is exactly what I wanted, and it really was. Before the summer started, I really wanted to throw myself into someone's passion project, someone who really had a business idea that they just were excited about. And Niall Maloney, the founder of PowCow, who is in the back of this picture behind the man wearing Jack on his shirt, Niall was that person. He had a great idea of something that he really wanted to try out, and he was able to do so, and then bringing me into that and helping me experience his passion was really exciting. So I got exactly what I wanted professionally, and I feel like I came back with a lot more professional growth and excitement for what I want to do, and I really enjoyed that experience professionally. Now, personal development and challenges. I sometimes was probably on the edge of a cliff, literally, and also in just social circles, but I really enjoyed my experiences of trying to learn about myself. I think I can be obsessed with personal growth sometimes, and that I discovered was a problem. I learned that I need to be more open with people. I really like listening to people's stories and having them be open to me, but when it comes to me opening up to them, I shy away and I put up a barrier. And so part of me trying to get past that is just explaining that to all of you. I would not have said that just 3 months ago, but being in Dublin really helped me to see that with the housemates I had, with the boss and the different coworkers I had, really helping me to get through that. I realized that I needed to be more engaging with the people around me, that I really needed to open up and not just shy back and listen, but I needed to be willing to actually be known by people and not be afraid of that. So that was a challenge, and when one of my best friends of the trip said, you're not being a good friend because you don't really want people to know you, that hurt for a second. But I was very glad to have that experience, and I took that back, and I feel like I've really grown as a person from that experience. I don't know if I would have had that same experience back in the States, but it was nice to have that growth and those friendships that have lasted really pushed me towards that. In personal development, I was able to really go off on my own sometimes and travel to different parts of the island and explore or make new friends. The man who took this nice professional shot is a professional photographer, but also grew up 30 minutes from where I grew up. And I met him through a church that I found there that my old mentor from Rhodes went to when it was founded 4 years ago. So that leads me into community. I went into this experience ready to be a workaholic, ready to dive into business and learn as much as I could, make PowCow up on the Fortune 500 list. I was ready to do it all. And then also the Irish culture, and Niall, my boss, said, slow down, Caleb, we are not that fast at moving. And being in that environment that wasn't so cutthroat or too quick with its emotions, that was able to help me really engage with the communities that I had. So the coworkers you saw in the slides earlier, those were all in the incubator where we worked, where we were able to go out for lunch together or go out to the pub later that night, and I was able to engage with those folks from different backgrounds and learn from them and from their projects. And then I was also able to dive into my communities of my house, which we called Margaritaville, because we lived on Marguerite Road, so it was appropriate. And I had a great community with the other interns, Jordan among them, and the church that I found there as well, and that has the same name as the church that I go to here. And I also was able to find a musical group that just invited me in. I borrowed a guitar from a friend at church and then sat down on my front porch step one night playing guitar, and my neighbor says, you need to go check out this pub that my husband used to play at. So I went, I played them a Radiohead cover pretty poorly, But they said, you can come back, and so I did, and I played with them all through the summer. I was younger than them by at least 2 decades, more so. But if you can't tell from here, but I had a great time. And what I really learned from that experience, I'd say, was that an epiphany hit me when I was listening to them play. I think it was a Bob Dylan song, I was hearing talk about Mississippi or the Mid-South region and the Delta, and realizing that that's my home that they're talking about, that the emotions that they're expressing about that are the same, but I have the experience of being from that region. And that was really excellent for me to see, to feel proud of where I come from, and to see how the communities abroad, though we study in international relations, we think on the system level oftentimes of the anarchic system that's dealing with the states and things like that. But when it comes down to it, I think I saw the relatability of culture and of communities that I could gain from this experience. And just hanging out with these great older folks, I was able to engage in that and really dive into art and music that I hadn't really thought of as much. And that was a great community for me, as well as my housemates who you see over here. We won a photo competition and beat Jordan's house with that photo, so I'm very proud of that. But community over there really mattered to me, and when I didn't even want that to start with. I'm disappointed in myself that I didn't want it to start off with, but very glad that I found it. So I think my experiences really grew me in that regard of seeing how I could put myself aside and open up more, but also really engage with those around me. And I think I came back a much better person from this experience. So thank you, Buckman family. But Stanley Buckman's portrait's out in the hall, and he started this whole generosity campaign to Rhodes and the relationship formed. And what really struck me from out there was on that plaque at the bottom, it says, "We know better the meaning of enthusiasm and generosity because of him." And I think his family has really carried on that tradition of excellence, generosity, and enthusiasm, and then transferred that to me, and transferred that to each of our stunning fellows up here who have realized that we can be enthusiastic about the world, we can be generous to those in front of us and pay it forward, and I intend to. We'll see if I can found my own frozen yogurt company and make it to the Fortune 500 list one day. But I am very grateful for them supporting us in this, and also grateful for all the people like Dr. Boyd, Miss Sandy, Dr. Risley, who helped us get there. Even last year, my parents came to this event, and I was not with them, but Miss Sandy said, make Caleb go try out for this, and I'm very glad that she just told them to tell me to do that, and I'm very glad that I did. So I want to thank each and every one of them. I'm extremely grateful for that opportunity. So that was my Irish experience.
To have Pow at the reception. Maybe next year. Our final presenter, last and certainly not least, is Claire Rickard. She is an international studies major. She hails from Montgomery, Alabama, and she too has studied abroad. I know, we just did a full sweep. Everyone has studied abroad, but she studied abroad in Jordan last year for a semester, so that was impressive. And another impressive thing about Claire is her leadership. Within the department, we have some student organizations, one of which is the Sigma Iota Rho Honor Society, and Claire is one of the co-leaders of that important group. So, Claire.
Thank you. I'm Claire Rickard, and I studied abroad in France this summer. It wasn't my original idea, but I took 8 years of French, and I was like, I got this, I can do this. I couldn't. My French was horrible, and I learned that quickly. I lived with a very old French couple, and it kind of taught me that all old people are the same. They asked me questions like, are all your friends married in America? Like, do your people have babies? I'm like, no, we're 21, I don't have kids. And they were like, did you bring your gun here, or is it in your suitcase? And I was like, no, I didn't bring my gun to France, thank you though. But they lived in a very nice part of Paris, which I was surprised by, because I've been living in a concrete square in the Middle East with limited water and electricity, so I was like, this is amazing. And I also lived right next to a huge park, which if you know me is amazing because I love to run. And it was so big, I got lost 5 times. My parents are here, so they can attest to the fact that I don't get lost. There was the Louis Vuitton Museum in the park. There were
2 horse stables and I think 5 ponds. I ran 8 miles straight and didn't get to the end of it. So who knows? It was great. And I worked with Martha Lamel, which is the lady at the very top, and with a charity called Demande nos enfants, and Lee can tell you that my French sucks. It means tomorrow children, and she founded it, Martha did, and it's an NGO that encourages young people to take control and be active in their community with social issues like Islamophobia, xenophobia, but also homelessness, and just want them to engage in the community because they are going to be the future. So she thought it was important to create a space, create an environment that they can talk and really develop their ideas. And that picture of me with a clapper, I think, is what I did this summer. I helped them with their new web series, which each episode takes on a different stereotype. So I was helping with the homelessness one. So I did a lot of research with her, did a lot of outreach. I engaged with the community. I helped even film one day, which was really interesting because it was all in French, and my technical French is even worse than my basic French. And so now to where I traveled. I am really thankful for having this scholarship because I love to travel. Travel is selfish because you're not traveling for anyone else, you're traveling for yourself. And I think that being able to travel also teaches you things that you can't just learn from sitting in Montgomery, Alabama. Surprising, I know. What I learned, I'll talk about more later. So, no, I didn't buy this with Buckman money. I didn't do that, don't worry. I got the opportunity to go see one of my friends from Jordan. She was at a family friend's house in Switzerland. And I got to hike some of the Alps. I got to eat like real Swiss food, got to see how beautiful it was, and wish I could live there. And last night, the family had just recently converted to Islam, and they were like, we have some bottles of wine that we can't have anymore. Would you like some? So we got a bottle from 1987 from this vineyard, and we drank it, not all of it, but we were given each like 3 bottles. My family had one from like 1998, I think. It was fantastic, and I don't know why they gave them to us. The next place I went was Heidelberg, Germany, with one of my friends from Rhodes, actually, St. Paulsen. We hiked in the Black Forest, and we accidentally came on a bike festival, which was interesting. And we drank good beer. We ate a lot of food, and I think that's what you're supposed to do in Germany: drink good food, beer, and eat a lot of food. I went to Amsterdam with one of my friends from London when I worked in London. It was cool. I got to see the Anne Frank house, the small Doge. And it was really cool. I think my favorite thing about Amsterdam was going to the Anne Frank house because living in the Middle East, I got to go to Israel and Palestine. And I think hearing Anne Frank's voice was a good bookend to what I saw in Palestine and their suffering, and Anne Frank's, and got to see in Israel. I think it was having the opportunity to like be like, what are those, and what does experiences mean? And I think the Buckman scholarship allowed me to have that, which is really invaluable. I also traveled to the King's Lodge, which is clearly a log cabin in the forest. This is in France. And it was kind of weird. I was on the train there, and they stopped in the middle of train tracks, and they were like, everyone get off if you want to hike. And I was like, what? We're in the middle of nowhere. And that is how I ended up walking for an hour on the side of the highway because I got lost. And I was like, I can hike there. I understand French well enough. I don't. But I made it, obviously, read a good book, and got home on the train. This very deep, sentimental picture is what I'm going to tell you what I learned. I think that the most invaluable gift that the Buckmans give you is personal growth. I lived in London the summer previous to the summer, and I kind of was like, I'm lonely, but like it's okay. But I didn't really get the opportunity to travel by myself, to go upon challenges and see that I can do this. As a female, even though I get harassed, I have the opportunity to be like, don't talk to me if I don't want you to talk to me. I have the opportunity to sit in a cafe, eat really good food, drink tea because I hate coffee, and read a good book. And it's okay to be lonely, but it's not okay to wallow in it. And I think that personal growth is invaluable, and I'm very thankful that I had the opportunity to be okay to be alone, and read a lot of good books. So I just wanted to thank the Buckmans for the opportunity, thank the IS department, Miss George Tracy, and y'all for being here. So thank you.
Thank you so much to all of our presenters, and now I'm going to invite you to come up here. Don't be shy. Don't sit down there. So get comfortable. And I think all of our interns are happy to take your questions, so I hope you have a few for them.
Not me. I'm not happy to take questions. I'll do it, but I'm not happy.
But question it.
I'm just kidding. I'd love to take questions.
I feel like any of you guys, how did you choose your perspective? Like, how did you find them across like the whole world? How did you choose
I
your
think
specific one?
they guide you a lot. So this is cool. He was like, you need to apply to this, and I was like, okay. And I had a lot of interest in the Middle East and had worked a lot in the Middle East. My original intention was to go to the Middle East, and it ended up being able to happen for unforeseen circumstances. But what are you passionate about? What internships have you had, and what is your language? So Arabic, Middle East. Yeah. Is that same?
Language is important or you wind up in Dublin.
Selling countdown.
Yeah, visa regulations in Russia are terrible. That's why I went to Dublin. That's why I didn't stay in Russia. So I fell backwards into it. But like Dr. Rilsey was talking about, I fell backwards into a lot of internships. So it's just the pattern of my life.
Are you all addressing this question?
No.
I'm telling you, somebody told me I should go, so I was like, why not? No, I used a third-party program to help me find an internship. And that was really helpful to have like the support from Rhodes and the professors here, as well as the support from a third-party programming who was in contact with me months before I left, throughout the whole summer, and even after. Has been following up, so it's fine.
Yeah, GMF, we have like a kind of like a long-term relationship with them a little bit. Like last summer, 2 interns went there as well. So Dr. Boyd set up the interview for me, and then it just kind of worked out. And, yeah, there I went.
Yes.
I assume that you all earned class credit for your internship, and also I wanted to ask, how do you locate a place to live over there? Are you on your own to locate that, or is somebody here at the university helping you locate a safe place to stay during your time overseas?
It depends. I was with the program provider, Caleb was with the program provider. I don't know if they did your housing. So if you do like, there are study abroad program providers and there are internship program providers, and they do everything. They pick you up at the airport, they do your housing, they hold your hand a little bit, they do everything. So that's how I got housing, but I don't know if...
I think the importance of the scholarship is also in independence. I'm not saying y'all aren't forgetting it, but they're just kind of like, do it. Like, you can find it in adult life. There's going to be no one being like, I can find you a place. But
So how did you find your old people to live with?
I also went, I'm kind of, someone like, this provider helped me find it. Like, there's avenues to be like,
Independence, right?
Annalie found her own apartment.
There we go!
she should be talking.
Yeah, I didn't use a provider, but it was a weird research process. I just kind of like Googled like apartments in Brussels, and then like went through like different like student living situations and different like contracts, and then Miss Tracy and I like went through things to make sure it was legit and not like some like weird like hole in the wall I was gonna end up in. So that was kind of like the longest portion of it for me. It kind of took a while, but it ended up being fine. I lived in a student house with a bunch of European students, which at times I was like, this is a terrible decision. I woke up one Sunday and they were playing ABBA at 2 in the morning, and I wanted to die. But overall, it was good. I don't know what that is.
Don't be shy.
Also, we all got 2 hours for it. I don't know if we got
Internship. Yeah, the IS department has like an internship class that you can do here as well in Memphis, but we just did ours. We got credit for it.
Yeah, we got
We
credit.
wrote 20 pages for Dr. Boyd there. She's read
20
them all.
whole pages.
I get to talk to you guys all the time, but, so how do you think it's impacted you as a student, coming back to Rose from the experience that you had in the classroom, and kind of talk a little bit about the personal development as well? How has it impacted kind of your situation in the classroom now? Or has it?
I know that for me, it was the first time that I realized everything I learned in my IS classes was applicable to real life. So, not that I didn't think it was, but it was the first time that I got to see it firsthand. So like going to Belfast, that mural wall that I was talking about, I was incredibly interested in the Rising of 1916, so the Irish Rebellion that set the trajectory for the Republic of Ireland to become independent, and because I really like revolution, and so I like went to a bunch of museums and like voraciously read about it and asked people like, how do you feel about division and all of these kinds of things. So that was kind of the first time where IS became real. It became real life for me, and I was able to use not the technical knowledge, because I didn't know the history of the Republic of Ireland, but the tools and the frameworks that I had learned in IS classes to kind of, piece apart things and learn more deeply, and that was really cool. I kind of felt like I was in a movie. It was awesome. So it's definitely impacted me as far as being able to realize the real world implications for our scholarship here at Rhodes.
I think Caleb touched on that when he talked about communities, and it's really important to travel, I think, because you go and meet people and you're like, humans are humans. That's pretty cool. I think going to like Jordan, I got to learn a lot about the misperceptions of Arab people and Islamic people. Going to France, I got to learn that, yeah, they're pretty cranky, they do smell sometimes, but they also are pretty cool people. And I had a lot of political discussions with my old French couple. Never mind.
By the way, I hope the French couple weren't in their 40s. So
they were like 70 and had grandkids, don't worry. But I think applicable to the class, if you go and learn that other regions do have other ideologies, you can bring another perspective to the class, or broaden your own perspective, because I have the personal belief that if you don't challenge your own personal beliefs, that made no sense, if you don't challenge your own beliefs, then you can't grow as a person, and I think you can become a better student through this scholarship.
How did you interact with your families back home?
WhatsApp is beautiful.
FaceTime is awesome.
I call my mom like once a month. She thanks me for that.
My mom met me in Scotland, so
That's great.
yeah, we traveled Scotland together. So you can go if your child does this, you can be like, all right, I'll come to you.
I guess I'll come here.
Yeah, I sent the cliff picture. Didn't scare as much as I thought it would.
Why you didn't send it to me?
I think my parents were kind of glad I was in Europe, not in the Middle East. No heart.
Yeah, after Russia, my mom was like, yes, Ireland.
Could you speak on how the experience impacted, or whether or not it impacted your career aspirations?
My first learning point was I'm not going to work in an NGO. And that was the biggest thing. But for me, I kind of had a plan. When I started IS, I wanted to work in a lot of applicable fields. So I worked in business, I worked in academic research, and this was like fleshing out my experience in the NGO world. And so, yeah, it definitely has given me the perspective to understand which sphere I want to go into, which is academic research and think tank research analyzation and not business or geo. So yeah, it's incredibly impacted my choices about my career path, and also about like what I want in a job. Like, I don't want to sit at a desk all day. You know, I want a dynamic work environment. I like a collaborative like workspace. So not only has it set me on a path, but it has also given me parameters to really understand what type of job I'll be happiest in. And so I couldn't have asked for more in that respect.
Yeah, I think for me, oddly enough, I'm an IS major, so I love international studies, all things international. But after this experience, I think going abroad as an American is really tricky right now, obviously, and so we have to answer, I don't know, I'm assuming, we all had to answer some tough questions about what we believe and what it means to be an American right now. And I, oddly enough, after coming home in the end of July, was like, I don't think I want to live abroad. I think I need to live in America. I think I need to fall in love with this country again. And so for me, at least, I'm a senior. I'm graduating at the end of this summer, and I'm only looking at jobs here. And I know that's kind of broad as well, but I think a lot of when I went abroad to study abroad, I was like, oh, I could live abroad. This would be amazing. And then after the summer, I was kind of, and I could be just changing context as well, but I've definitely grown more passionate in my interest in applying international studies, things that I love, but in the U.S. too. So.
It also taught me where I want to go in the world. Like, I definitely live in the Middle East now. Sorry, Mom and Dad. I think it just helps you narrow your focus. Like, NGO work's not for me. I don't feel as passionate about it as I was when I worked at a National Council for Business in the Middle East and the U.S. So yeah, it just kind of helps you narrow your focus, and something you're not being penalized for doing. You're getting paid, you can travel, eat great food, drink great wine that Buckman's didn't pay for.
Yeah, I'd say a similar thing. I learned a little bit more about what I'm interested in and what I'm not. I had, though, something valuable for me because I was working with non-Americans and a few other Americans, just looking at things from a different perspective, and realizing that, like, in our minds, the first thing we think of is, like, the American perspective and, like, what we think, and then that's not how the rest of the world works. And, like, obviously we all know that, but just kind of, like, seeing how real that is and, like, how that applies to, like, global interaction. I don't know, that's just kind of something I came back with. Maybe it's more academic than career focused, but I'm not graduating this year.
Lucky.
I think like Lori, I realized in my last few weeks, I looked around, though I'd like to keep working with PALCA in some capacity, just emailed my boss today, but I thought I like Dublin and I like being abroad, but it's not home, and I think I'm still figuring out where that is. But career-wise, I think it helped me to see that I want to get more involved in startups, not just business, but startup communities. Like, I want to be around things when they're starting. I want to be around things as they're growing and developing. And Memphis right now is growing and developing, and so I'm very interested in staying here and trying to get involved with how the city is bettering itself as it's coming out of a bit of a slump. So I'm excited to see where I go. I don't know if I want to be in the business sector or local government or things like that, but I'm interested in how things are moving earlier, because I see myself fitting into the earlier roles of things, and I've just been around that my whole life. But being with PALCA helped me see how being at the start of something helps my impact be a little bit larger, so I could help craft the culture that PALCA has. You could say it did with 2 people. I could craft the culture and craft like the standards and the traditions, and I really enjoyed that.
Any other questions? All right, please join me.